Thank you for tuning in to Leadership Level Up. I'm Brian Prairie.
And I'm Dr. Jeff Williamson.
I am just starting my leadership journey.
And I've been guiding leaders for 30 years.
Our podcast aims to shine a spotlight on outstanding leaders and provide a platform for them to describe their leadership journey and share the guiding principles that have helped them become great leaders.
Today we're joined by Matt McBurnie, Vice President of Institutional Advancement at Riverside Medical Center.
Hi friends, welcome back. We're excited today to have our friend Matt McBurnie with us. Matt is Vice President of Public Relations and Communication at Riverside Healthcare here in the area. It's always good to be with you, and we're looking forward to hearing from you about leadership and your journey, and I'm sure there'll be some nuggets for the listeners that they can go, oh, I want to remember that. I want to write that down. Mm-hmm. So thanks for being here with us.
Hey, I'm excited. I've been excited about this conversation.
Me too.
Because of the conversation, but because I'm hanging out with friends.
Right.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
That's been part of the joy of this, has been that we have such a rich pool of leaders in our community that we've been bringing in, and every single one of them has been a friend of one of us or both of us. In many cases, there have been a few where someone I invited.
There's been a few that you've invited me to meet, and I'm like,
but you are new to no one.
No,
so
everybody knows this guy.
That's part of what you do. So we're excited to have you share a little bit of your journey with you. I know it's varied and interesting, and so tell folks a little bit about what preceded you being a VP.
Yeah.
What preceded you being a VP at Riverside? It's a lot, but I'll let you take the wheel and tell us about that.
I love to tell the story among a live group or class or whatever, because you watch people kind of turn their head and go, "How did that?" Yeah, that's right. Mm. How did that? So I never recommend that somebody try to follow the line that
the McBurnie
is my story. Because it isn't necessarily where I thought. I didn't at some point say, "Boy, I think I'm going to be in healthcare administration at some point," and yet it really feels like it's been the natural progression for where I am. Really, to share it quickly, I started at Riverside specifically with the foundation. So I was executive director of the foundation for about half the time that I've been at Riverside, and then moved to broader responsibilities as a vice president, which includes marketing, still the foundation, community and government relations, volunteer services, retail services like fitness center, and a wide variety of other things. A lot of those external facing things, I tell folks when they come around Riverside, don't be worried. You will not see me scrub in on a surgery. They don't have me in patient care. But those things that really support our folks that do that work is the joy of the work that I get to do today. But previously, I had about a 4-year time where I was executive director of the United Way of Kankakee County. Okay. So this community, highly focused, and while that is a fundraising position, it really introduced me to non-for-profit management and leadership, board management and governance, and really introduced me to this community in a very broad way. One of the coolest things about United Way is you get to go into everybody's workplace. So think like Mike Rowe with Dirty Jobs, right? He goes in and you're like,
you see it all.
I never saw,
Right.
The United Way guy gets to go into all the safety meetings at all the plants in town.
Right.
Gets to go into the bank meeting, in the back room. So I've been able to see people in their day-to-day work and just have developed such a broad respect for the kind of work that goes on throughout our community. Teachers in classrooms, university setting, manufacturing that goes on, just all kinds of different things. So it was really a fascinating time. And but before then, I was a youth pastor for 8 years. And I was a junior high pastor for 4 years, and then I was demoted to senior. No, I actually followed those students. So, they had graduated up into senior high, and I was able to spend time with them again as senior high pastor. So really, really special to kind of have that time, all at one church. And so many times people in ministry or youth ministry move from different churches. I stayed with the same group of people, and that was really a special experience.
Yeah. So you begin with a youth ministry,
Yeah.
and then you move into United Way and those kinds of things. I was thinking as you were talking about United Way, it's like this leadership training development experience as you were leading that organization, that process.
It really was. And I look back at those days, and really, I had no professional fundraising experience at all. And so it was, I will say, a respectable gamble that organization took. And so I credit just some really great community-minded folks in this town that kind of took me under their wing and taught me just a great deal about all those things. One of those being, how do you communicate and invite somebody to be a giver?
Mm-hmm.
And how do you not create that to be a personal moment, but rather, I'm inviting you to be part of something.
Right.
And if it's a good time and a good thing for you, I'm going to celebrate that. I'm going to celebrate whatever generous looks like for you. And if it's not the right time, it's not the right cause, you've got something else going on, there is no judgment whatsoever.
Right.
We bless and release that, you know?
Yeah.
And so then it's all joy.
Right.
It really is. And so those days were truly joyful. We hit some records, broke some records, made some great strides in those days. And so,
well, I think when they hired you, obviously they made a good call, but you also are the master of something that I've talked about for years too, and that is friendraising. When we can build relationships, we can build trust with people in the workplace, whether they're our friends or they just know us through our organization or our work. When they know our word means something and they trust us and they hopefully like us while they're at it, then raising dollars, raising commitment is so much easier. And every year, almost a decade, we were talking earlier that I've taught fundraising at the university. The students can come out of that class and there's one phrase I can guarantee you that they will know, and that is relationships are everything.
Yeah.
And I say that over and over again, and I know you believe in that. And as I watch you lead campaigns and events and those kind of things in community, I think you're just like top shelf friend raiser too. I'm like, man, you know, that's my space as well. So I know that's a part of you and who you are, how you do that.
Yeah, we talk about that the relationships are everything. I want to emanate that because it's definitely the experience I've had with people. Right. That's when I've leaned in, and whether it be, for fundraising that, has a financial end to it, but there's so many other ways that we all are invited to give and be part of. And I go, it's when there is this sense of relationship and trust built that it's like, hey, I'm gonna stand right beside you and
show up for you,
together.
as we like to say. Yeah, I'm gonna show up for you, man.
And we were kind of talking about, there's a group of people in this community that are leaders in lots of different organizations. And what I love is you get that group in the room together. And we travel to these different rooms together.
We're for each other.
We're for each other, right? It's so exciting. It's like, look, this is an important cause to you. I know you. I trust you. Therefore, I'm leaning in and I'm paying attention.
I'll go for that reason, even if I don't know much about the organization. It's like, I believe in her. I believe in that guy. And if they're inviting me to be a part of this, I'm in.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so many people do that in our community.
It's been a common through line in a lot of the people we've talked to is, and it sounds almost, trite to talk about it, relationships. It's really, leadership is really just about making those relationships and building that trust. The end. I mean, it's easy to talk about, but it's a lot harder to implement.
Right. And, Stephen Covey, for years when he was still with us, talked about emotional bank accounts, where we make deposits and show interest and show up for people and invest in them without a catch. That when there are times, if with their coworkers or people we supervise, if we need to say, Matt, I need to discuss something with you. It's not going to be a really fun conversation, but here's something I observed that I want you to really work on or focus on. When we've established deposit, right, we build that trust, we build that relationship, and then if we were having a conversation like that, you'd say, well, I've known Jeff a long time, and we've interacted a lot. I know he's for me. I know he's a supporter and encourager. So if he has a word of encouragement or a word of admonishment for me in a setting like that I'm going to pause and listen because the deposits have been there. And of course, the inverse is that if we don't invest in relationships with other people, then we go, Brian, you know what I don't like about you? You know, it's just a train wreck.
I shut down instantly.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
just
a
like,
train
I don't want to
wreck.
hear that.
It's a train wreck, right?
Yeah.
And so we get that in community and relationships. It's like, gosh, there's so much we can do when this is a we thing.
Right. Yeah.
And I know you really focus on that in your work with Riverside. So, you know, as we talk about leadership and what that looks like in our community, what about Matt? What are some ways that you are intentional about how you grow your leadership abilities, or how do you grow as a leader personally?
Yeah. Well, you know, as I think about it, it's definitely changed over time. There was a time when I was reading a lot. I will confess, right now I'm not reading a lot.
You're not the first
I'm,
leader that
right,
said
no,
that.
I'm not reading a lot right now. I am listening more. So podcasts, and I mean that, podcasts are really fantastic because last night I had to mow the grass. I got to mow the grass, however you want to look at it.
Yeah.
That's a great time for me to put the earbuds in, you know, and protect your ears, but you know, put the covers on otherwise. But it's a great time to listen in and get that 20-minute, you know, just kind of download. There is a devotional that I listen to every day, and a dear friend of mine and a great leader, mentor of mine, Barry Hebner, recommended this devotional, and I get the email, sign up for this email. Well, then it says listen now. Oh, click. Okay, so every morning when I get up and I'm stretching and, you know, making breakfast and everything, I'm listening to, you know, this daily podcast, and it's just a short devotional that comes out. So anyways, I'm listening more than anything else. Yeah. So those are really helpful. I love to have debate conversations with friends. And those have been more difficult to navigate in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I have two really great groups of friends. Marcia and I, my wife, we have a group of friends here in town where we talk about everything. We have a group of friends also that we have vacationed with since we were in college.
I love that.
We went to college together, and once all four couples were married, we went on vacation. We said, this is great.
Let's keep doing it.
And so the next year, there were 3 baby boys among us.
Who are now shaving.
And then some. One's married, one's engaged to be married.
Right.
And we just, we'll bring the boys.
Let's keep doing it.
No big deal. Well, I'm a bit on this tangent, but it's interesting.
But it relates.
These 8 adults now along the line had 17 children in these 4 families.
It's like the family reunion, just your college friends and loved ones.
It's us. And so we have vacationed together for more than 20 years.
That's fantastic.
Every year.
That's cool.
And now even New Year's Eve we're together. We're in 4 different states, but we come together. And so at times there have been 25 as part of these gatherings for a week.
Yeah.
So, I mean, these are like cousins, you know, these guys.
Yeah.
But anyways, that group of dear friends, you know, across the miles, different experiences, we talk about everything. And so, you know, what they always say is don't talk religion and politics. Oh, we talk religion and politics in 5 minutes. You know, why did you vote for? What do you think about? How do we handle this? How do we solve it?
Because you've been making deposits into that account for decades, and that's where that freedom can happen. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. I'm thinking back at one of the conversations I had with one of those dear friends, and it got teary for both of us because we really kind of bumped each other into the skin. Like, we're really seeing this passionately differently.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Where do we go with this?
Yeah. And then we kind of had a breakthrough moment. Oh,
never thought about that. Yeah.
This is what's going on.
Right.
And then, you know, dear friend, he's crying a little bit. And kind of a check in, are we okay? And I'm like, of course we're okay.
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? And he said to me, he goes, I can't have these conversations with everybody else.
Right.
And I realized
they can't handle it, maybe.
No.
Or
they can't handle it.
Yeah.
I don't know if the relationship can handle it.
Right.
And I went, man, like
That's
that.
huge.
So I go, it's a great moment of iron sharpens iron, a reference to Old Testament verse. But it really is that where I go, it is in those contexts where I can throw out an opinion that maybe I partially believe.
Right.
But I can kind of play. Now it's out there.
Devil's advocate.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
and we trust each other enough to go at each other.
And that's a gift, man.
Anyways. So, what is it that's kind of shaping my leadership? I go, well, that shapes how I view the world, the context in which I lead, and how I want to communicate with people.
Well, it's constantly reshaping that, right? And having those conversations is,
static.
it's like, well, no, I've drawn a line. Here's where I stand. And it's like, no, when you can both meet at that line and then understand each other and then still come away and hug it out or whatever you got to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. You have your opinion, I have mine.
Right.
All right.
Yep.
Yeah.
We're still friends.
I hope as a culture we continue to rediscover that.
Yes.
Because the root of that was because there was a relationship, because you guys both stayed with it, whatever the topic was.
Yeah.
You reached a point of going, I just think you're so wrong about that. But I love you anyway. Right?
Yeah.
And if we have to just leave it at that, to go, you're my brother.
Yeah.
I'll never understand that.
Right.
But we can live there.
Yeah.
We can live there. It's something of a lost art, but I hope we just can. So bless you for promoting that.
You continue to do. I love what you said about rediscovering that.
Yes.
I think it's key and critical, right? But it's like let's go back there because overall it seems that we've migrated to I'm in this camp and you're in that camp, and
so we can't agree.
As if there's nothing in between, right?
Right, and as if there's nothing more to me than my opinion on X, Y, Z. And so I just think that's rich. We've got to rehearse working it out. And how many times do you go, oh, we really don't disagree. Yeah. We were arguing about different things in the same topic.
That we thought was the same topic. Yeah. So we go, oh, wow, there's 80% there. And this other 20%, we can just be at peace with that.
Yeah.
Because you don't have to agree with me on everything to be my friend.
No.
Sometimes I will kid friends, and say, if it's some silly thing like, oh, the Cubs are Sox or Bears or Colts or whatever. And I'll just say, well, we can still be friends. I don't know how you don't like that team, but we can still be friends.
Because it's the Colts.
I'm talking to the right guy, born and raised in Indy. That's right. And so, and we can have fun with it, but I'm like, oh my gosh, if we can rediscover on things that are maybe more important than which team you're for, and to say, we can still be friends.
Right.
I don't understand, but we can still be friends.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that would change a lot of conversations that are going on in our world.
Truly.
Oh, yeah. So let's see. You mentioned somebody who's on our list that I want to have in for an interview too, and that's Barry. So he's been a friend to both of us for a long time. Mm-hmm. So I may be like answering a question, but he's probably one of the leaders that you would say, I watch what that guy has done. I watch how he leads an organization, how he is such a brilliant, thoughtful leader, but he's just such a simple, kind, he doesn't act like someone that has all the gifts and abilities that he does. He's just a humble spirit, and I love that about him. So shout out to Barry Huebner.
Absolutely.
But along with him, what would be either some people or some types of leaders that you've really looked at and said, I want to grow up to be like that?
Yeah. Well, Barry, absolutely on the very short list and over a long period of time. And I'll highlight one thing about Barry. I love the questions that he asks. We've led together on boards and committees, and he often asks the right question that gets us into the discussion we need to be having, rather than maybe the easier discussion that's on the agenda.
Right.
And I just have so appreciated him about that. I feel really fortunate. I was thinking about this conversation, and I thought, man, if I start going down a list of
it could be
mentors
long,
and admirers, the list is long, but there are certainly people at different eras of my life. I really feel fortunate that when I have been in my employment, I've always had a really deep respect, and I would call mentor relationship with my boss. So today it's Phil Cambick. And I watch and have watched Phil lead in challenging circumstances.
Yes.
He is a differently wired leader than I am. And yet I think we've learned to work in that tension to where there's so much that I learned from him because he leads differently than I would naturally, that it challenges me to really broaden how I lead and to think about it differently. It challenges that. So I really love that. And so that's kind of the ongoing dynamic. Healthcare, like many industries, is complex. It's absolutely mission-based. It's also got to be thoughtful from a business perspective. It's absolutely human at its core, and there are a whole lot of people affected by every decision. So we have to give it a whole lot of thought. Anyways, that's a quick touch.
Sure.
When I worked for United Way, I worked directly for Harry and Jamie Simon, a couple of incredible leaders in town. And while they are each deeply respectable as leaders, they're an interesting couple to lead together because they have such a different gift mix, and yet both have background in theater.
Were they board members for you that time, or is kind of mentors, or
maybe an entire podcast for another day?
Okay,
but at
we can
that
do that.
time, yeah, that's right.
Totally.
At that time, our local United Way actually outsourced management to their consulting company.
Oh, okay.
So while I was the executive director for United Way, I really was an employee of their consulting company, which meant they kind of said, yeah, we know that, there's a lot of this he doesn't know, but we're going to show him the way.
Here, do this. Here's a model for that, system for that. Gotcha.
And I will say a few weeks ago, I went and sat down with them and had a conversation with them in their home, and it's rich. They are just incredible people and have had an interesting life to talk about.
Right.
They've poured into lots of different people, and so I always find that I am certainly a better person for having spent time with them. When I was on church staff, I a number of people. Dan Boone was our senior pastor, and boy, what a gifted leader and communicator. Still my favorite theologian.
Now college president.
That's
has
right.
been for many years at the university.
Just have the deepest respect for him in that regard. Through that time, I'm an Olivet graduate and then worked for a time. I was kind of dual vocation, worked part-time for Olivet. So I've kind of lived in the shadow, like many of us, of Dr. Bowling. So Dr. Bowling, another one that I've been able to kind of lean in close and watch his leadership and watch the impact of his leadership, not only on a community, but on a college and on an entire church denomination.
Cool.
So really, really special to watch him.
Those are some good ones, man.
Okay,
Yeah,
and I'm going to give one more that one of the most influential in my life was Dr. George Dunbar. Passed away a few years ago. He was the director of Orpheus Choir that I was able to be part of as a student. I served 2 years as president in the choir. We took a trip to Israel during that time. We did a recording on CD when that was quite a thing, cassette and CD. What I learned from him being in rehearsals and being on tour and how to be thoughtful about caring for people. I think I learned more about leadership by being in the choir than any other single experience of my life.
That's quite a tribute. And
yeah, that is.
I'm fortunate enough that when I was a student a few years before you, Dr. Dunbar back then was the Orpheus director, and was my observation of him was just this gentle, kind, quiet, spirited man who still could show us how it's really supposed to be done in terms of people and interactions and excellence.
Yes. He had very simple ways that were memorable that communicated so much. And I will say that he is so highly revered for those of us that were in choir with him. I mean, it just reaches deep into my soul. And we also had the medium of music. My undergrad is actually music education. And so I leaned in particularly heavily to how does he rehearse a choir and prepare for rehearsal and get you ready for
watch everything he did. And that to me is a perfect example of really the magic, if I could say that, or the power of humble leadership
Yeah.
is a person like that who has literally influenced thousands of students across decades that he served in that role at the university. But people like that, more than tell us, they show us how to live. They show us how to work. They show us how to handle rough, tough situations. And often that's more powerful than, let me tell you how this should go. When someone lives it out, that is unforgettable.
Yeah, so true. Being a leader, we can get stuck and we can kind of get mired in our own thoughts. So what are some things that you do to kind of get you out of a rut, or just kind of, like crunch a problem, solve a problem? Like, what does Matt McBurnie do to kind of keep that moving forward? Because that's important for leaders, is to keep those things moving forward. So what do you do?
The phrase that comes to mind is, we tell ourselves, we challenge ourselves to think outside the box. But sometimes you have to get out of the box to think.
Exactly.
And so it is that thing of, sometimes you have to change your circumstance. So if I'm continuing to talk to the same people about the same challenge, we're going to end up in that cycle.
Yes.
And so that's when I love to truly go take a walk, get outside, go bounce it off somebody that has no prior knowledge, and just go, okay, I'm working on this crazy thing. Let me see if I can explain it to you, and you follow my thinking. If you can't, knock it apart.
Right.
So much for me, and I really love to do this, is to pull a group, and I try to establish meetings this way, where it is that, okay, we're going to throw this thing up on the marker board, and let's just work it. Let's just think of it a different way, and let's erase it. And truly, kind of the brainstorm method.
Yeah.
Just to go after.
Like no idea is bad. Just let's throw everything out there.
Yeah, and really just go, okay, we're going to put that up there. And sometimes you find the thing emerges.
Right.
But I will say that moving out of stuck, many times it takes a while because somebody has the idea, but for whatever reason they haven't brought it forward. They had a preconceived idea. Somebody will think it's dumb. I'm probably the guy. I shouldn't even say it.
Right.
And so sometimes you have to get there a while before. Okay, I'm going to say it.
Yeah.
And then throw it out, and you're like, okay, that just changed the conversation.
Right.
Now I see it differently.
Yeah.
Clarity. So those things help. The other thing I'll tell you is, boy, I talked to my wife. Nobody knows me better. And I say in deep humility, nobody has shown love to me more than her.
Yep.
So I know, like, there is nothing I can do that's going to portray an image or whatever. Like, she knows who I am. She believes in me and my leadership. And so she will often caution the negative voice that's maybe sitting on my shoulder and doubting, things like that. And she'll be like, no. I know who you were made for, and what you were made for.
Yeah.
And this is what needs to happen. She has a really great centeredness about her. And so when I'm at my best, I'm listening to her.
Right. Good sounding board. She can say, no, I think that makes sense. And it's not inconsistent with who you are and your values. So check it out, right? When somebody that's known you all those years in the closest way says, no, I think that seems to make sense, then you're like, okay, well, let's see where this goes.
And she'll do the simple things. She'll say, well, have you prayed about it?
Yeah.
And you can,
Oh, you have to go there.
Oh, you had to. And then I'm like, and she's right. You know what I mean? Like, she's
I haven't.
Right. Yeah. No, I haven't. Yeah. And you know what I mean? And it's like, man, let me start from the beginning. It brings me back a little bit, but I went through a really difficult time a couple years ago in the midst of COVID. I think everybody went through a really difficult time.
Right.
Difficult stuff for me too. And some of it had started just before then. And I sat with Barry Hebner, and I said, Barry, like, throw me a line. And his advice was simple. He's like, go back to the basics. Get up in the morning, and are you Are you spending time in God's Word?
Mm-hmm.
And are you praying?
Mm-hmm.
And go back to those. And I went, no. I've gotten busy and distracted and doing these other things. I'm reading these other things and listening. And I went back to the basics. And I went, okay, let's rebuild the foundation.
Yep.
Right.
Take a breath.
Yep.
And guess what? I'm gonna live into my day the way I'm designed to live.
Standing on your foundation,
Yeah.
which sometimes we can lose.
Starting
And
that
it
down.
leads to the authenticity of leadership, which elicits the trust that's necessary for it.
Right.
But if you've ever been in a place where you're trying to play a part
Mm-hmm.
as a leader and you're not living it authentically, there's something about it that people know.
Right.
And they may have to follow, depending on where their paycheck comes from. But it's not the way you don't
Right.
you don't want that as a leader. That's
It's a lower
Yeah.
it's a lower quality version of leadership
Yeah.
if it's not authentic and perceived so by the team that works with that
Right.
person.
Well, and that was something very apparent to me when I was starting my leadership journey. I was like, I don't know what I don't know. So then I instantly was like, Jeff, I know I have more people that are depending on my guidance. How do I do this? Like, how do I do this? Because I look back and it's like, I know I've had some bad, I call them bosses because bosses aren't leaders. I think
the boss can be the title.
boss can be the title, but maybe not leading. So I was like, I don't want to be that. I want to be able to lead them in a real way that I'm giving them something rather than telling them something. And he really helped me, like you said, iron on iron, helped me kind of hone those and ask those questions to myself, like what's important to me? How do I keep moving this? How do I keep moving what I want to learn forward? And how do I keep my leadership journey keep moving forward? And actually, this podcast came from him asking me those questions.
We
He's
had
like,
these conversations, thought we should ask these to a lot of other people.
yeah, because he asked me, like, last thing he asked me before our sessions were up, he's like, how do you want to keep this going? Oh, I want to talk to other leaders in the community.
Yeah.
And then a day later I go, hey, you want to do this and record it? Like,
Absolutely.
And so much value there.
yes.
Right.
Yes.
And there's value for the person that's sitting on this side of the table too, because it's like, boy, you've caused me to pause and think about these things and articulate it.
Yes.
And it's there, but I haven't necessarily identified it, labeled it, articulated it. It's helpful.
Yeah. Well, that self-reflection, I think, is been another key kind of through line for a lot of leaders that we've talked to, is just being able to take that moment, whether it's praying, whether it's meditating, whether it's just taking a moment to see everything in front of you and then not being crushed by it, just being like, okay, here it is.
Yeah.
Here's how we move forward.
Right.
And I think it's really, that's probably the most important, and don't let that define you.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It allows you to be who you are as a leader.
Yeah.
Because there isn't just one model
Right.
that, this is the way to do it in every industry, in every situation, with every personality. It's just not. 'Cause like you were saying with Phil, your CEO, he's a different personality, different skill set, brilliant leader, and he does it differently than you would just because you guys are different guys.
Right.
That's
Right.
totally fine.
Yeah.
Right. And there's a good dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
And he and I have sought to find, again, as president and CEO, every platform is his. From time to time, he invites me in, to have my moment too on that platform. And so there's an interplay that we have about, you're going to cover this side and I'm going to cover this side of it. And together, that's going to produce a really, balanced perspective, we think. And so that's what we're always, seeking to find.
Sure.
Right.
I one of the things that's been fun, you didn't ask this, but I'm
That's
going
okay.
to throw it here.
That's okay.
One of the things I do whenever I can is I get on stage. I'm a theater guy.
Yes.
I love theater, love to watch it. I cheer it on. And occasionally I will go audition for a show.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
And do my thing.
Yes.
And I learn so much in that. There's a part of me that comes alive with it. It's just great fun. We had a guy that came in, and I'll give credit where credit's due. His name is Michael Aloso. Really interesting guy. He actually was in Pink Panther 2, if you will. And he's done, kind of theater and movies. He coaches actors. He coaches politicians on how to deliver communication.
engage
So he really is a
Okay.
communication coach. He works with CEOs. Well, we've had him in a few times at Riverside to work with us as a senior team on communication generally. One of the most fascinating things I've seen him do a couple of times is he says, okay, I'm an actor and I work with actors, and what relevance does that have to do with, what we're talking about in healthcare or any other business? So with the flip chart, and he says, okay, what are the qualities of a really great actor or actress? So they start writing things down. Clear communication, believability, help you move through a series of emotions. They know you're able to see the plot because of the way that they act, whether it be small motions or large motions. They interact with others in a way that helps establish who the character is. They're carrying an important part of the storyline, right? They go through all those things. They've prepared. And he goes, now, I want you to think about the qualities you want in a leader that you'll follow. And you go, it's the same list.
Yep.
Oh,
That
wow.
has been an experience in my life as a coach and a trainer person, is that it's easy to think, well, this industry is way different than that industry. And it is what they do or what they provide. But again and again and again, it's like, it's communication, it's employee engagement, it's systems, processes, all those things. If they're messed up, it really doesn't matter what the industry is.
Right. Yeah.
It's a common denominator.
Yep.
And in that case, in a positive way, it's like,
Yeah.
these are all the things that we would say, yeah, we want that from a leader.
We want that from a leader.
Yeah.
And his other argument, is sometimes one thinks of an actor as somebody who's faking it.
Right.
But somebody who really is a professional, their job is to live into it in a way that is authentic.
Yes.
And you can tell that difference when somebody's playing a part and when somebody has found the part that's in them and they come out as an actor.
Yes.
It's
Right?
so real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then it's like, oh man, like you were, or you defined that because they found that quality in themselves,
yes.
and that was the character.
It's a difference maker.
So it resonated with me in really
Yeah.
big ways, and I
Yeah.
went, man, that is a light bulb on moment for
Yeah.
me on
Right.
how I want to live and lead
Yeah.
as a leader.
I love
Well,
that.
I think that's a great reminder for us as we kind of wrap up our conversation, is that those characteristics of strong leaders and positive leaders
Yeah.
will positively impact all different industries, all different backgrounds and realities. So if we can get a handle on that as leaders and then deliver that,
Yeah.
it can really go well.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for coming in and being with us. We definitely have material for a future visit to come back.
Oh, yeah.
Part 2.
Yes.
We've
I love
talked
it.
some about doing, multiple episodes.
Maybe he'll sing some for us next time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right.
yeah.
Come with your favorite tune from a show you've been in or something like
You
that.
got it.
So we'll come back to that a few months out. But thanks again for being here with us. It's great to have you on Leadership Level Up.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Matt.
Coming up next on Leadership Level Up podcast, our guest will be community leader Aaron Clark.